Welcome back to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Burdine from Clarksville PD in Tennessee. He has almost 28 years experience in law enforcement. By the time this airs, he will have gone over that hump, but as we're recording, we have about 6 days until his 28th year anniversary in law enforcement. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So welcome to the show, Chief Burdine. Thank you so much for being here.
It's great to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I'll give you like a preemptive congratulations on 28 years in this career.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. It's went by very quickly, to be honest with you. It feels like about 10, but that's fortunate, I guess. I've divided my career up into different things, and so it seems a lot shorter than what it is.
Well, the old adage, time flies while you're having fun. So I wouldn't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but I would love if you could give maybe a little bit of background. How did you get started? Why did you choose law enforcement? What did those 28 years look like for you so far?
Well, I remember being in seventh grade, and me and my best friend, his name was Jason Herman, we were in middle school, and we just both knew what we wanted to do. I knew I wanted to get into police work, and I never doubted, never swayed, never wanted to do anything else. This is what I wanted to do, and um, so I went to, finished high school and did some college, and then went to the police academy on my own and just sent myself through because I was 21. And after completing that, I had submitted some applications, and Clarksville was hiring at the time. It was growing, it's still growing. So I applied up here, and the plan initially was just to be here 2 years, 3 years, and then move back to East Tennessee.
Hmm.
But I got up here, and it was a bigger agency, and started, doing different things, made detective and our SWAT team. And so I just made this my home.
So you've been at the same agency your entire career.
Yes, yes.
That's amazing. Did your buddy from middle school, did he also become a police officer?
Yeah, we got hired on together up here. We both joined, and we lived in back then. I think I was making we got up here. I was making maybe 19,000 a year.
Mhm.
So I didn't care. I had no idea about pay or benefits or retirement or anything like that. But we did. Unfortunately, Jason was, he probably would be sitting where I'm at today as chief, but he passed away on a motorcycle wreck early in his 20s, 24, I believe he was, heading to Nashville, Tennessee, and had a wreck and passed away. But yeah, he probably would be where I'm at today.
I'm sorry to hear about that. I think, you set the example. I'm sure he's proud of you
Yeah.
in all of your accomplishments. I was curious to know, I like to play a game kind of peak and pit, the peaks and the valleys. Are there anything, or is there anything throughout your career, any experiences, good or bad, that you think shaped you as a leader today?
Oh, there's so many. The peaks and valleys, just like you said, we've had those in law enforcement. And fortunately, with me, we're a larger agency, a mid-sized agency. We have 358 sworn officers. And I've had some great leaders along the way that when I was young, like I said, I was 21 when I started here. So I was very naive to law enforcement and very naive to a lot of things. And fortunately, had some great leaders along the way that taught me that even in the valley, we can still be the light, and there's going to be peaks and valleys in this career, and we just have to remain who we are and don't let whatever happens across the country let it affect our badge. And that's the way he some taught me, and that's just the way that I've tried to lead as well, is remain who we are. There's no shame on my badge, and I'm proud to still be a cop 28 years later. I'm not ashamed of anything beyond this badge, and that's why I'm going to continue to do what we do for
I
sure.
love that. No, I really appreciate that. Remain who you are, and you can still be the light, even in the darkest of times.
Mhm. Yes.
I think that's great advice. You and I, when we talked offline, you said that back in 2010, you were a part of your SWAT team
Mhm.
and you started experiencing some symptoms of anxiety. Can you explain what happened during that time and what that felt like for you?
Right. Yeah, I was in our professional integrity unit, which is basically internal affairs. The chief at the time put me over there, but also at the same time, our SWAT team, we were very busy, but we also are part-time. So I was the SWAT team commander and inside of internal affairs, and and plus there were some personal things that my both my parents had some issues health-wise going on. And at the same time, my first, after long awaited time to have a baby, that we were pregnant, and there was the stress of that, and so I started getting very things going on with my body. I'd feel tingling on my arms. I felt my there was my heart issues going on. I actually went and had a stress test done
Mhm.
in 2010, because I thought that something was going on. I was feeling very uneasy just going to a department store, being around a lot of people, feeling closed in, and that is not who I was. I've always been a very um, resilient individual and somebody who's confident, humbly confident, but I was experiencing things I've never experienced before. And I remember going through this and thinking, what is going on? Why am I feeling this way? And then I remember talking to an assistant chief of the police that had retired, and he told me, I remember a conversation we had that he had experienced things as well. And I remember that conversation coming up and him telling me there was anxiety. And I thought, there's no way that Ty Burdine has got anxiety. I just doesn't happen to me. But I remember thinking, okay, is this real or is this not real? Is this stress? So I through the time realized it is stress. There is nothing medically wrong with me. And it's normal to maybe communicate, to tell people like I am stressed.
Yeah.
So I ended up making some life choices. I ended up resigning from our tactical unit. Um, still young enough to do it, but still feel like that I should. So I made some life choices and came out better on the other end for sure.
Do you think that, especially back then, I know in 2010, wellness looked very different than it does now. Do you think that there was this perception that if you were stressed and you were experiencing anxiety, then that meant that you weren't tough or you weren't resilient? Do you think that there was that thought process that was happening at that time?
Oh, sure. Us growing up in law enforcement in the 90s and early 2000s, especially when I was on patrol, there was not anything wellness. I never heard of that word. And, there might have been some, you know, thoughts at the time you're going to go see somebody, you're going to see a therapist, or somebody about wellness. Of course, there'll be some stigma with that, for sure. That's just the way it was back then. And we've really worked hard at our agency to try to stop the stigma, um, because it can get a lot worse than I was suffering, and it surely can. But yeah, wellness was not a thing back in 2010 for sure.
Do you think that that experience of talking to someone else who said, "Hey, like I've been through that too," do you think that that helped you to feel like you're not alone and that it's okay and totally normal for some of the things that you go through, not just on the job, because some of the things that you said was also life. And I think that we forget that it's compounding. You are, you know, someone outside of the career as well, and you have home things going on. Do you think that that conversation really helped you to understand that you're not alone?
Sure. I was just thinking, well, I'm so glad that it's nothing medically. I'm glad that
Mhm.
I'm, not having heart issues,
Sure.
and fortunately with me, it was a short stint of realizing, okay, I got anxiety, my personal beliefs and my faith. I did, I went to prayer, and for me, that was it was short lived to say, hey, okay, let's get it together. We got it together, made some life adjustments, and came out better. But I'll never forget that. And so I try to remember that when I'm talking to people is that, hey, it's okay. There's things going to come up and you're going to feel stress and you might need to do something about that. And, I know we'll get into this conversation later, but about how wellness came about with our police department. big proponent for wellness, just because, hey, we're a better product out on the street to the citizens when we're well. That's for sure.
Right. Yeah, no, I would imagine that. I mean, I think that everything that we go through personally and all of our experiences impact the way that we move forward. And so I would imagine that all of those things that you went through do make you a better leader. You know, you are able to now speak to your team in a space of experience of saying, "Hey, like that happened to me too." And hey, like I had conversations with other people about this and it is okay and stress is going to affect you. What advice would you have for people who maybe think that the stress of the job is not going to impact them and maybe are resistant to reaching out for resources to offload some of those things?
Every single person, I just don't know anybody that can't be affected by stress.
Mm,
And I think that it goes anybody, the strongest, the toughest, the toughest young men, women in this job face stress. And I guess my advice would be to say that whether you go see a licensed therapist or you go talk to your spouse or you talk to whoever, your pastor, your friend, that it's okay to talk about it. And that's probably um, one of the best things that you can do. If you keep it in, you're going to end up like a lot of people do. And unfortunately, things happen. We've seen, suicides and things like that that we do not want to see in our agency ever again.
yeah.
And um, it's all because it stays in and people feel that they can't speak and talk about it, or they'll be less of a man or woman if they talk about, maybe that they are suffering from stress. It doesn't make you any less of a person, it just makes you more real and a genuine person in my belief.
Yeah, I really like that. It makes you more real. And I think that it is incredibly isolating and like I can't relate to someone who says like, "Oh, I'm perfect and nothing has ever affected me ever." Like if someone told me that, like I don't think that I could ever relate to that person. And so I really appreciate you saying that it makes you a human, it makes you real. And I do think that we underestimate the power of talking and communicating. And it doesn't have to be when you're having a quote unquote breakdown or when you've reached like a tipping point. I think that you could say, hey, like, man, that call really was hard.
Mhm.
Like that was tough, you know, and just even saying something like that and just recognizing that, like, yeah, that was a hard thing, just lets out, and you've heard this analogy of the balloon before, right? It just like lets out a little bit of that air that is filling up that balloon over time. And so I agree. I think that just talking about it is a really good first step.
Mhm. Yeah, you put on this uniform, you put on this badge and this vest, and you just, you feel like, okay, especially when you're younger, that nothing's going to penetrate this.
Mhm.
There's nothing going to penetrate this uniform. Um, you know, but it does. And you have to be intentional. You going back to leadership, you have to be intentional about, especially as you get older like me, to see or hear the calls that these officers go to, be intentional about creeping in to talk to them, especially through our I'll get into this a little bit about our wellness counselors, so intentional about just showing up and reading faces and seeing, who maybe I need to go have a conversation with later, just to be intentional about that conversation.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how the wellness program and the resources started within your organization. When did that start for you, and how did you get the ball rolling?
Well, in 2019, I was in a 10-week course. It's a police staff command course, and part of that course you have to do a staff study. And the staff study is you could pick any topic. And I remember, you know, um, me and Chief Crockrell I think it's Chief Crockrell maybe at the time that was Chief of Police, or it might have been Chief Ainsley, but we would have conversations about wellness, but we really never knew how that would apply to a police department. So I just chose the topic of wellness, not really thinking anything about it. Just thought, well, it's something I can write 10 pages on. I can get some data. So I did a staff study on wellness and whether or not our agency could use it. And so I did a wellness and I compared three police departments, San Diego, Nashville, and Indianapolis Police Department, and looked at their policies. And and realized real quick that, we're we are a mid-sized agency. We can't really have what some of these bigger cities have. However, when we looked at Indianapolis, we saw, well, this might be something that we could get into. So um, I reached out to their wellness unit, and they're so great and quick to talk to me about their wellness unit and what they do, and it really doesn't have to be that complicated. So we went through, under, our mayor is very supportive, and city council, and we sought out, looking at grants, and I went to a grant that I think it's Crytech, and they supply training for officers or for departments for wellness or whatever topic you want. But we chose wellness, and they sent Indianapolis down here to talk to us about how they do it, and what they utilize. And so we looked at their policy, and we thought, well, this is something that we could do, and we have a fierce grant writer, Lauren Winters, with our city, and we got a grant for a licensed therapist to come into our police department full time, just to work with us. And we just took it step by step, and we got the right person, with Mr. Josh Forbes, who came on to us. He's a retired retired Army, been there, done that. And he's got an incredible story that, maybe sometime you could talk to him. He's got an incredible story. But
I love that.
we um, we started with him, and me and Chief Crocker at the time, we were interviewing these licensed therapists. And to be honest with you, we didn't really know much about it. So we brought somebody that we knew from the medical community that could sit on these interviews to help us as we narrowed down the applicant pool to see what we wanted. And we just took it step by step. We created a mentorship program. We adopted similar things from Indianapolis Police Department's policy. We hired on this licensed clinic social worker, LSCSW, and we just took it step by step, created a policy. And just like many police departments too, they start looking at other policies, and then they take what they like and then don't take what they don't like. And that's what we did. And we landed with a great policy, a great person, and it's taken off. And one thing that we knew going into it, that we had to start to say this is important from us at the top level command staff. And we supported it. We started getting the front of things and talked about wellness and how that we look forward to this. And we had a supervisors meeting. I remember there's probably 40 of us supervisors in there, and a sergeant. He says, what we ought to do? He says, we ought to make this mandatory for all supervisors to go through a 1 hour wellness session a year. And that will release some of the stigma that, hey, it's okay to go talk to somebody. Because they see us coming into Mr. Forbes's office, all the supervisors from the chief down. And that's what we did. And then here we are 2 years later, and think that we have a very successful program. And that's pretty much how we started, and we're still going. We want to increase it. We're looking to get a dog at some point, wellness dog. We're looking at that pretty hard. Our wellness counselor has been invited to IECP to speak at the engagements with theirs, with initiatives that we've created here, and it's been very good to us. But with police departments looking to get into wellness, there's not a one size fits all. It's really just looking at policies to see what you can afford and what you can do, because some agencies have to rely on EAP, and that's how they do it. And we wanted to get something in-house, because EAP we don't really have a lot of communication with. And one of the biggest things that we found, besides not having the stigma, but is the confidentiality that has to be there. From day one is the confidentiality, because one person goes into that office and something comes out, your wellness is dead. And so we've really made that a priority, that, hey, our wellness counselor doesn't come to me and talk about everything that's going on. Only those extreme cases that I have to know is what I know. So
Yeah. I I really love that you guys got together as supervisors and said, we're going to make it mandatory for us. I don't know if I've ever heard it put in that way before. I've heard of mandated wellness before, or mandated therapy sessions, but as a group of supervisors and leadership saying, we are going to be the ones that start this so that we can break stigma and show that it's okay. And now, when you and I were talking a little bit offline, you might bring on a second person because you guys are busy enough where people are utilizing the resources. And I think that that is a testament to the work that you guys have done. And I know I said this a little bit before, but if people feel safe to utilize the resources, then they're going to utilize the resources. And if you guys are busy enough where you might need to add additional resources, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that that speaks volumes to the culture that you've created.
Right. And you know as well, you've talked to a lot of people in the police world about wellness, is that it's not just the police officers. When they come home, their spouse, their loved ones, they're affected, especially you have officer involved shooting or a crime scene that, we've unfortunately had to see several of these that are can be very bad. Um, we include spouses with our wellness as well, and they're welcome to come in and make appointments too. And that's why we want to expand, is that we want to take care of the officers, but we want to take care of the families too. And as we grow, and as we continue, we know that we're going to continue to go to serious events and have these issues, that we want to grow to have I guess, a bigger wellness unit in this initiative. We also have a lieutenant. At the time when we started, we had a lieutenant that was considered over the wellness unit, and they would help oversee some things. Mr. Forbes works on his own. He's our wellness counselor. He doesn't need a lot of supervision, but we do have a lieutenant that as well that helps out with things, because there's times we don't, there's times where a sworn personnel needs to come into the picture when it comes to some of these issues. So
Yeah.
that's why we did it.
I don't think anyone's going to argue the importance of supporting the family unit and providing resources for the family. Again, I don't know if I've ever had a conversation where family members were welcome to come in and utilize talk therapy sessions. So I think that that's a great idea. We know that home wellness is important, and the wellness at home is going to affect the wellness and performance on the job and vice versa. And so, however, you can support not just the officers, but the family, I don't think anyone's going to argue that that is a great idea and a really valuable resource to have. I had one guy, I'll never forget this because it was earlier in my career, and it wasn't something that I had thought about yet. I hadn't had these conversations yet. I was still very, infancy stage of the things that I was doing in wellness. And I had a gentleman walk up to me and he was like, I'm not really into all the wellness stuff. He was very blunt with me and he's like, I'm not the guy, I'm not the wellness guy. He goes, but he's like, I gave my wife some of these resources. He's like, and she's less stressed dealing with me. He's like, so we're both happier, and it was this moment where like the light bulb went off and I'm like, wow, like I think oftentimes you forget that there's a whole nother half at home that is also stressed and also needs resources. And so I really appreciate that focus that you guys are putting on the family unit.
Yes, very true. And I'm not the type you just talked about. I was not a wellness person. It's definitely not. But I've seen in the past few years that it really, you talk about retention, officer retention. We have that. All law enforcement has that issue, and I personally believe, I don't have the data to show it, but I really do think that it's helped retain officers who might have quit or going down the wrong road and was intercepted by Mr. Josh, and it's kept their careers alive in law enforcement.
Yeah. And that's the goal, right? Like you want to see people have a long and successful career and a long and successful retirement. And, what can you do to put resources in place to encourage that longevity? I think that at the core, that's what everyone's looking for is longevity. Can you maybe go through? I know that you offer a lot of different things within your organization. Is there anything else that you want to share that has been successful that you guys have added? And my second part to that question is how do you pick the quote unquote right people to put in place so that there is that buy-in and trust and engagement?
I would say that some initiatives we've had in place for quite a while is the is the physical portion of this, where you could every year you can come in and take a voluntary PT test. You don't have to do it. We encourage it. We offer ways to help you get through the PT test. But if you come in, you take your voluntary PT test, you get a small points, but you get a little points added on to our promotional exam.
Mm,
So you pass the PT test and you get some bonus points for that. Number two is that you get time off. We have 24 hours that you get for passing that PT test. And
nice.
so having that incentive, I think has helped some people, say, okay, I want to buckle down and try to do that this year. And then once you may buckle down and you decide, I want to try to, be more fit, that's helps out mentally as well. Uh,
Hmm.
and you mentioned about having the right people. That's not that easy, but the deal is you have to have somebody that people trust and is genuine, is not doing it for a paycheck, that has the right heart for it. And those usually you can find, within your agency. You can say, okay, this person has a heart. He's respected by others. He knows that he's calling you not because out of mandate, but because he cares. And we've had one person there, and we've got somebody else coming into that place right now that fills that role. That when they call an officer, they know it's not a rank somebody calling them. They have somebody calling them because they care, and that's what you got to have. Otherwise, it's just a checkbox, and we don't want check boxes. We want somebody who's going to be able to answer that call and know that supervisor or that wellness counselor or that person in the wellness cares about them and what they're going through.
Yeah. You have said so many unique things that I'm like, wow, like I've never heard that. And I know I've said that a few times, but having points towards professional advancement as an incentive and time off. We know there was that joke that everyone says, like, there's the two things that cops love, and it's money and time off, for like incentives.
Yes.
But the points towards promotional advancement, I think that that's a really interesting take. And to me, I would imagine that, people who do want to rise through the ranks would be motivated by that. Like anything that you can do to have a little bit of an edge over the, quote unquote competition, is always helpful. And to show that initiative of like, hey, I'm gonna make sure that I'm fit so I can pass this test so I can have a little bit of an edge, I think is really cool.
That was a great idea, and I can't take credit for that. That was done prior to me becoming chief,
Mhm.
but it's been I think it's been very successful, and it's camaraderie too. You're out there on the track in the heat in the summer, and you're going through it, and there's some laughs there. So it's not only just um, wellness, but also some camaraderie too.
Yeah. I know that you did a lot of research into different organizations and the things that they're doing, and you kind of said, take what you want and leave what you don't. And did you find in your research that there was maybe one singular thing that was setting people up for success? Like one thing that maybe everyone had that was the key to creating that culture or that success within the wellness programming?
The one thing that, and we've already talked about it, the one thing that everybody I've talked to within the wellness community, especially when we first started out, and I'm just calling people from Texas to California, is that to have a successful program, it's got to be from the top down. You
Mhm.
cannot be something led from the bottom up. And that's the key. It's got to be supported at the top. And people, you know, officers know what's genuine and what's not. And if it's a checkbox to where we're getting a wellness program within our police department to check a box, look, we know that what's genuine and what's not. So I think that genuine care about the wellness unit and setting it up for success from the very top, from the chief down, is the number one thing that you can do when setting up a wellness unit by far.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I always laugh when you say that because it's quite literally your job to sniff out the BS. So if there's someone who's disingenuous, I would imagine that that's pretty easy to figure out pretty quickly.
Mhm.
I wanted to talk a little bit. You made this statement that kind of stuck with me in our first conversation, and you said that um, you start this career wanting to help. And
Mhm.
then over time, the some of the realities of the job, harden you. Can you maybe explain what you meant by that and some of the things that maybe you recommend to younger officers for preventing burnout or so that they don't become hardened over time?
Absolutely. I mean, it's what I like to say is you get a chip on your shoulder. You work, and especially if you work night shift and you're on nights and you're away after midnight, you're the people offering to buy you dinner and those kind of things during the day, is gone. And it's a different type of environment. And you get bit and cussed at and yelled at and called names and everything else. So you can develop this chip on your shoulder. And if you don't get rid of that chip, that resentment, realizing that not everybody hates you,
Mm,
and it's going to reveal itself on a traffic stop or when somebody crosses you, and you're going to see that what you see sometimes on TV is that with these body worn cameras, that coming to light and revealing itself in a negative way, that frustration of not getting rid of that chip is going to find its way up at some point in your career. And we try to tell people is that you got to find ways to get rid of it, whether it's your faith, whether it's coaching, whether it's separating yourself from not always being around cops, maybe hanging out with people who aren't cops when you're off duty, just to get rid of some of the stress or find ways to get rid of it. Or you know what? Maybe what we found that sometimes, hey, you just might need to take a break from your job and let's go look at maybe be assigned to community relations unit for 28 days to see that hey,
mm.
not everybody hates police. There's a lot of people out there that like police, and just to get rid of that chip a little bit because if you don't, it's going to reveal itself at some point, like I said, and result in something that we don't want.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's a really good point about the community engagement. I've had quite a few conversations about the importance of that and, you know, having moments where you can go out in the community where people are saying hi and thank you and smiling at you and having opportunities that aren't interacting with people during their worst moments, but just being out there and, being able to play basketball with some kids or, whatever it is. And so I think that that's a great approach. And, I think having moments to disconnect always is really helpful, even if it's like 5 minutes of just going for a walk around the station, around the block.
Yeah, and you brought up a point too. I meant to say a minute ago. You said that we begin our career to serve, and every single person that comes in to be hired, that we hear very similar things. I want to come in, I want to serve my community, I want to help others, and that's what they get into the job to do. And then somewhere along the way, whenever it becomes more of a job and not serving, that's where that some we can change. We become hard hearted and no, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but just more calloused towards everything. And I've been there, done that. I know it. I know that it's easy to do, become calloused, and you can't remain emotional to every single thing because they see so much. And that's why cops, I believe, are built a little bit different. But if you don't keep a check on it and realize that, then you're going to lose of why you joined this job to begin with. And what I found is this, is that maybe this is not for everybody, but we, whenever you serve others and you purposely serve, you go out of your way. We call it second mile opportunities here. You go out of your way to go. You have to go to that call for service for that person. You're mandated to go walk that first mile. But if you can find a way to walk that second mile with that individual, maybe not every day, but you're serving and that purpose will give you fulfillment in your job, and just serving will help you in a circle approach to maybe de-stress you a little bit to say, hey, this is fulfilling. This is why I joined law enforcement. um, I found that that's the case, is that the more you serve this, the better you feel. But we just get into law enforcement and you get into that area where it's us versus them. You got to break that. And it's easy to do. I've been there, but it's a constant conversation we're having around our agency with leadership to try to, I don't know, to try to curb that mentality. If that makes sense.
That makes total sense. And law enforcement is so much more than enforcing the law. And I
Mhm.
think that's exactly what you said. There's other opportunities to serve and to have that deep-rooted fulfillment, I think is what you look for, right? Like that everyone that comes in, I've never personally talked to anyone in law enforcement who didn't get into this career because they wanted to help people. There's this core to you guys of helping. And so you said this a few times, connecting with your why and using that as a way to keep going in this career in a positive way. What has your why been?
My why has always been that I felt very called to do this job from day one. And, being my why now, I think it's changed through the years, but my why now is that I never wanted to become chief of police, and I've said that from day one. I've never wanted to become chief of police, but I felt that I was called and I was put in a position from the previous chief to be up to where I can do this. I feel confident I can do this job, but I feel called to do this job. And I want to do this. My why now is for our personnel, and their patrol, our guys that work here and girls, ladies and gentlemen that work here. I believe in this profession, and I want to leave this place better than I found it. I want to make it better for them. It's getting harder every day. It's getting harder and harder to be in law enforcement. We're scrutinized. Everything that you do is second guessed, and now we're recording everything, and it's hard to do this job, and it's getting harder. And I want to make it better for them, and that's my why now.
Thank you. What words of wisdom would you share with someone who's earlier in their career? Maybe something that you wish you would have known earlier or something that's helped you along the way.
I think that I think that when police officers join this profession, there's so many expectations of perfection of who they are, and they're being scrutinized. They've got somebody watching over their shoulder in field training. They've got a family that's maybe they're not married yet, but they have people looking at them and expectations like you're a cop now, so you're held to so much of a higher level off duty and on duty. So with these expectations and everybody you feel like is looking at you, you feel like that you have to be perfect. In my opinion, that's the way I felt. Like I didn't want to let people down. People want to make proud. I felt like that people were expecting me to be perfect, and it's okay to not be perfect. You're going to make mistakes along the way. You're going to mess up a time or two, but just remain like we were talking about earlier. Remain who you are as an individual. It's who you are, and our old chief used to say this all the time. He'd say, "Be kind, be fair, and be lawful." That was kind of our mantra there for a while, but that's the way it is. If you continue to just do the small things right, everything will work out.
Mm.
But you can't expect you're not going to be perfect through your career. And I think that that's one thing that I would go back to say is that, okay, Ty, you're not going to be perfect. It's going to be okay. There's going to be bumps in the road, but you can get through it.
Thank you. Great words of wisdom. And I agree. I think as humans, especially with like a type A personality, which I also share, and a lot of people do in this profession, I think you do want to be perfect. And I think remembering that we are all human and that it's okay. And I think it just lets off that pressure a little bit to say like, and the other thing I heard, one time that really stuck with me, it was another chief that said, "This is the only profession where people on the outside perfect profession or expect perfection, right? There's no other career in the world where everyone expects perfection, and that is so unrealistic when there's humans, right? And so I think to have that realization that, it's okay to need resources. If the stress gets to you, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to be human. And you guys are all in it together. So thank you for sharing your words of wisdom and coming on here talking about wellness. That is all I have for you. But if I missed anything, if there's anything else you want to say, I'm going to give you the floor.
I just appreciate I know you do this to spread the word about wellness and to make it you know in a national way less of a stigma, and I appreciate that. I believe in this profession. Like I said, I'm proud to be a police officer, and Thanks for taking me on today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. We'll keep in touch for sure.